The wire was burning a hole through her ribs, and the man across the desk had not blinked in 90 seconds. Maya Cruz kept her hands loose in her lap, kept her breathing slow, kept her eyes on the documents she was supposedly translating. A shipping manifest in Croatian, dull as ash, and felt the recorder taped beneath her left breast tick against her skin with every heartbeat. The office was all glass and black steel, 40th floor, the lights of Chicago smeared below by a rain that had not stopped in 3 days. And Adrian Kovač sat in the dark, on the other side of the desk, not reading the papers she handed him, not looking at the city, looking at her with the flat, patient attention of a man watching a fuse. "This word," he said finally, and tapped the manifest without looking down at it. "Poshilka. Translate it for me." "Shipment," Maya said. "And this one." He still hadn't looked at the page. "Lajlivica." Her stomach dropped through the floor. Because that word was not on the manifest. That word was not anywhere it should be. And she knew it. Of course she knew it. She spoke better Croatian than half the men who worked for him. And the knowing was the trap, because an innocent translator would have to glance down and search for it, and she had not glanced down. She had gone still. She made herself look at the page anyway, 3 seconds too late. "It's not here," she said. "No," Adrian agreed. "It isn't." He leaned forward, and the light from the city caught the edge of a face that the Bureau's file photos had not done justice. Hard and symmetrical, and utterly without warmth, a face built for the cover of a magazine or the inside of a nightmare. "It means liar, Miss Cruz, the feminine form. I wanted to hear how cleanly you'd say it." A pause that lasted a small eternity. "You said it very cleanly." The recorder ticked against her ribs. 40 floors down somewhere, in a van, 2 agents were listening to her heartbeat climb. "I don't know what you mean," Maya said. And Adrian Kovač smiled the first and almost the last time she would ever see him do it, a small, cold, strangely sad expression, and said, "Yes, you do. You've known since you walked in here that I'd find out. What you don't know yet is what I'm going to do about it." He stood, buttoned his jacket, and crossed to the window, putting his back to her, an act of such deliberate vulnerability that it frightened her more than any threat could have. "Go home, Miss Cruz. Sleep. Come back Monday. We'll continue the manifests." He looked at her reflection in the black glass. "And tell your friends in the van that the man on the 3rd floor of the parking structure across the street has been photographing the wrong window all week. They'll want to reposition before someone less patient than me notices him." She did not sleep. She sat in her apartment with the lights off and the rain running down the glass, and she waited to die, because that was the only thing that made sense. She was burned. He knew. In the world she had spent 2 years studying, a burned agent did not get sent home to sleep. A burned agent got found in the river, or did not get found at all. She had a gun under the couch cushion and a go bag by the door, and she sat between them all night, and nothing came. No black cars, no silenced men on the fire escape, just the rain and the long, slow dawn going gray over Lake Michigan. On Monday she went back. Because that was the job, and because she admitted this to no one, least of all herself, she had to know why she was still breathing. Adrian said nothing about it. He set a new manifest in front of her, and she translated it, and he watched her do it, and at the end of the day he said, "Good, thank you, Miss Cruz." And that was all. And the next day, and the day after. 2 weeks. She filed her reports to her handler, Raymond Petrov, the man who'd recruited her out of the linguistics program, who'd been her mentor for 6 years, who'd sat with her in a parked car the night before she went under, and told her he'd pull her the instant it got dangerous. And the reports were full of shipping routes, and account numbers, and meeting times. All of it solid, all of it apparently real. And Petrov was delighted with her, and the investigation crept forward, and Maya began to understand that something was very wrong with all of it, because the intel was too clean. Adrian Kovač knew she was a federal asset. He sat in a room with her every day, knowing she was recording him, and he kept handing her things to record. A man like that did not make mistakes, which meant everything in those manifests was there because he wanted it there, that she was not stealing his secrets, she was delivering his messages, and the Bureau was reading them like scripture. "You're feeding me," she said to him on a Thursday when the office had emptied and the rain had started again. She set down her pen. "Everything I take to them, you choose it. You've been choosing it since the first week." Adrian regarded her for a long moment. "Took you longer than I expected to say it out loud." "Why?" Her voice was steadier than she felt. "You could have killed me. You could have exposed me. Instead, you've spent a month using me as a courier to my own side. Why?" He was quiet. Outside, a siren wailed and faded. And when he answered, he did the thing she would never get used to. The thing that undid her again and again over the months that followed. He told her the truth, plainly, in a city built entirely on lies. "Because the day you bring them something real," Adrian said, "is the day they kill you. And I've gone to a great deal of trouble to make sure that day doesn't come." She didn't believe him. Of course she didn't. He was the most dangerous criminal in the Midwest, and she was an agent of the United States government. And the suggestion that her own people would murder her was exactly the kind of poison a man like him would pour into the ear of an asset he wanted to turn. She reported the conversation to Petrov, a sanitized version of it, and Petrov listened, grave and warm, and put a hand on her shoulder and said, "He's working you, Maya. This is what they do. They find the loyal ones and they make them doubt. Don't let him." And she nodded, and she believed her mentor, because believing him was easier than the alternative. But Adrian had planted something, and it grew in the dark the way these things do. She started watching. Not him, them. The operation. And the more she watched, the more the seams showed. The raid that was supposed to catch a major shipment called off at the last minute on Petrov's order, citing a source she was never shown. The wiretap warrant that came through impossibly fast on one target and impossibly slow on another. The two informants inside Adrian's organization who'd been ready to flip, both of whom turned up dead within a week of being logged into a federal database only a handful of people could access. She told herself there were explanations. There were always explanations. But she was a linguist, and her entire life was the study of what people meant underneath what they said. And the operation was speaking a language she was starting sickeningly to understand. The night it broke open, she was almost killed, and Adrian was the one who pulled her out. It happened in a parking garage on the south side. A meeting Petrov had arranged, a mid-level Kovač lieutenant, supposedly ready to turn Maya sent in alone to translate the man's confession, because she was the only one he'd speak Croatian to. It was textbook. It was also, she realized the instant the elevator doors opened on the wrong floor, a setup, though she did not yet know whose. The lieutenant wasn't there. Two men she didn't recognize were, and they weren't there to talk. And she got her gun half out of its holster before the first one had her against a concrete pillar, with a forearm across her throat and the cold ring of a suppressor under her jaw. And then headlights. And then the second man simply dropped, and the first man turned, and Adrian Kovač walked out of the dark between the parked cars, in a soaked black coat, unhurried, a pistol hanging loose at his side, and said something low in Croatian that Maya translated automatically, even as she choked against the concrete. "Take your hand off her, or lose the arm." The man took his hand off her. Adrian did not lower the gun until she was behind him, and even then he kept his body between her and the two men, one dead, one frozen. And he did not look at her. He looked at the living one, and he said in English now, for her benefit, "Who sent you?" "You know who sent me," the man spat. "I do," Adrian said softly. "I wanted her to hear you say it." The man's eyes flicked to Maya, and there was contempt in them, and pity the way you pity something already dead. "The Bureau sent me," he said. "Your handler sent me, sweetheart. Petrov. You were supposed to die down here tonight, and Kovač's people were supposed to take the blame for it, and the investigation gets its martyr and its monster in one." He didn't finish because Adrian shot him once, and the sound was enormous in the concrete, and then there was only the drip of rainwater, and Maya's own ragged breathing, and the smell of cordite, and Adrian finally turned to look at her, and his face for one unguarded instant, before the cold came back down over it, was full of a fear she had never imagined a man like him could feel. "Are you hurt?" he said. "You..." She was shaking. "You just killed two." "Are you hurt?" Adrian said again, and he had crossed to her, and his hands came up to her face, the way you'd cup water you were afraid of spilling, tilting her chin, checking her throat where the forearm had been. And his touch was so careful, so at odds with the violence still ringing in the air that something in her chest tore loose. "Maya, look at me. Are you hit?" "No," she whispered. "Then we go." He pulled his coat off and put it around her shoulders. It was warm. It smelled of cedar and rain and faintly of smoke. And he kept one arm around her and walked her out of the garage into the downpour. And she let him, because her own side had just tried to murder her in the dark. and the monster was the only thing in the city keeping her on her feet. The safe house was small and clean and anonymous, a walk-up above a shuttered bakery, and Adrian made coffee in it with the quiet competence of a man who had hidden in 100 rooms like this, and Maya sat wrapped in his coat at a kitchen table and finally let the truth in. "Tell me all of it," she said. So he did. Raymond Petrov, he told her, had been on the Kovač payroll for 11 years. Not Adrian's payroll, his father's, and then Adrian's, by inheritance. A federal agent purchased Young and kept like a piece of property. "He sold us names," Adrian said, his hands around a cup he didn't drink from. "Witnesses, informants, anyone inside any agency who moved against us. Petrov flagged, and we made disappear. And the cases collapsed, and everyone assumed we simply had better lawyers." His jaw tightened. "I hated it. You should understand that. I inherited a man I never wanted to own, a man who murdered honest people for money and called it business. But you don't release a leak like that. You don't let a Petrov walk around free, knowing what he knows. So I kept him. God help me. I kept him the way you keep a loaded gun in a drawer you've sworn never to open." "And me," Maya said. "Where do I come in?" Adrian looked at her, and the cold cracked just slightly. "Petrov built this operation," he said, "not to catch me. He's spent a decade making sure I'm never caught. He built it because internal affairs had started sniffing at the pattern, too many dead witnesses, too many collapsed cases, all flowing through one man. He needed a clean win to bury the suspicion. He needed an operation that looked like it was closing in on me, run by an asset so obviously loyal and capable that no one would question her reports." He set down the cup. "He needed you, Maya, the brilliant translator with the immigrant mother and the spotless record, and the desperate need to prove she belonged. He recruited you to be the face of a war he had no intention of winning. And when the operation had served its purpose, when it had quieted internal affairs and made him look like a hero, he was going to end it the way these things end, with his asset dead and me blamed for it. Tonight." The rain ran down the dark window. "How long have you known," she asked, "what he had planned for me?" "Since before you walked into my office," Adrian said. "I have someone inside the field office. I knew your name and your cover and your purpose before you knew mine. And I made a decision I have made exactly once in my life." He looked away, ashamed the way she would learn he always looked when the truth was about himself. "I decided I wasn't going to let him do it. I fed you intel that was real enough to keep your reports valuable and false enough to lead nowhere fatal. I kept the operation alive past the date he wanted it dead. Every safe lie I handed you bought you another month." His voice dropped. "I've been keeping you alive for 4 months, Miss Cruz, and you've spent every one of them recording me for the man who wants you in the ground." Maya stared at the man across the table, the monster, the predator, the target of her entire career, and understood that he was the only person in 2 years who had never once lied to her about anything that mattered. "Why?" she said, and her voice broke on it. "I'm nothing to you. I'm a federal asset sent to destroy you. Why would you—" "You know why," Adrian said quietly, and did not say it. And the not saying filled the small warm room like rising water, and neither of them moved. And the space between his hand on the table and hers was 4 inches, and the most dangerous distance in Chicago, and he did not close it. And she understood that he would not, that he would die before he'd use her circumstance to take something she hadn't freely given. "I can't," Maya whispered. To him, to herself, to the oath, to all of it. "I can't." "I know," said Adrian. "I'm not asking you to." They could not stay in the safe house, and they could not go to the bureau, because the bureau was Petrov, and Petrov was death. So they did the only thing left. They went to war, the way Maya knew how to fight it, not with guns, with evidence. Because here was the thing Adrian had not understood, being a man who had never once trusted a system in his life. Maya did not need to bring her own side a target. She needed to bring them a traitor, and she had spent 4 months building, without knowing it, the most complete record of Raymond Petrov's corruption ever assembled. Because every false trail Adrian had fed her, every sanitized report, every killed informant was a thread, and she was a linguist, and threading meaning out of noise was the only thing she had ever truly been good at. The plan was hers, and it was brutal, and Adrian hated it. "You want to wear the wire into a meeting with the man who tried to have you executed," he said flatly in the gray morning light. "Alone." "Not alone," Maya said. "You'll be listening, and he won't kill me in a federal building, Adrian. He needs me to die, dirty, caught, compromised, a story he can sell. He can't shoot me at a debrief. He has to talk to me first. He has to find out how much I know. She met his eyes. So I'll let him find out I know nothing. I'll be the loyal, frightened, broken asset who survived an attempt she thinks was Kovač's men. And I'll let him comfort me. And I'll let him incriminate himself, reassuring me. He's arrogant, you said. 11 years untouched. He won't be able to resist telling me in some sideways way how safe I am now. And the wire will catch it. She drew a breath. And then I take it not to the field office. I take it to internal affairs, and to a federal prosecutor whose name isn't in any database Petrov can reach. And your handler hangs himself with his own mouth. Adrian was silent a long time. And if you're wrong, he said, if he doesn't talk, if he simply puts a bullet in you in the parking lot and calls it a clean shot on a turned agent, then you'll have heard it, Maya said, and you'll do what you do. She held his gaze. I'm trusting you to be the most dangerous man in Chicago, Adrian. Don't make me regret it now. Something moved in his face that she had no name for. He reached out slowly, giving her every second to pull back, and tucked a strand of hair behind her ear. The barest touch his thumb grazing her jaw, and it landed harder than any kiss could have. If he touches you, Adrian said very softly, there is no building in this country deep enough to keep me out. You understand me, federal or not. I will come through the wall. I know, Maya whispered. And the terrible thing, the thing she'd stopped fighting, was that it didn't frighten her anymore. It steadied her. I'm counting on it. The meeting was at a federal annex on a Sunday, when the building was nearly empty. Petrov's choice, and it told her everything. He'd brought her in under the warm cover of concern, an emergency debrief after a traumatic field incident. Just the two of them and a recorder he controlled. And he sat across from her, with his kind, tired, betraying face, and told her how worried he'd been, how he'd nearly lost her, how Kovač's people had clearly made her and tried to clean house. And Maya played the role she'd built her whole career on. She let her hands shake, she let the tears come, and they weren't even hard to summon. She let Raymond Petrov believe he had won. I want out, she told him, voice trembling. I can't go back in there, Ray. He knows. He's known for months, I'm sure of it now. I don't know why he didn't. She let it break. I'm not safe. Tell me I'm safe. And Petrov, 11 years untouched, arrogant the way only the long unpunished can be, leaned across the table and took her shaking hands in his, and gave her exactly what Adrian had predicted. You're safe now, he said gently. I promise you that. The operation's over, Maya. I'm shutting it down today. I should never have put you in that deep, and that's on me. But it's done. Kovač will never touch you. I've made sure of it. I've spent a long time making sure of things in this city. You're going to walk out of here and disappear into a nice, quiet posting, and forget you ever heard the name Kovač. And no one, not him, not anyone, is ever going to come for you. You have my word. I've kept people safe from much worse than him for a very long time. He squeezed her hands fatherly, fatal. Trust me, I'm very good at making the dangerous ones go away. The wire under her blouse drank every word. How? Maya whispered the perfect frightened question. How can you promise that he's so powerful? And Raymond Petrov smiled and signed his own death certificate. Because I've been managing the Kovač organization's exposure for longer than you've been at this bureau, he said. There are arrangements, Maya, understandings. Men like Kovač and men like me, we've kept the peace in this city through quiet cooperation that people like you are better off never seeing. I've buried a dozen problems bigger than you. I can bury this. He patted her hand. Let me protect you. It's what I do. She walked out of the federal annex at 11:40 on a Sunday morning with 2 minutes and 11 seconds of recorded confession against her skin, and she did not go to the field office. And by Tuesday, a federal prosecutor named Diane Okafor, chosen because she had once turned down a Kovač bribe and lived, which in Adrian's estimation made her the only honest official in Cook County, had the recording, the 4 months of threaded evidence, and a cooperating witness whose identity was being held under seal. The cooperating witness, of course, was Adrian. He turned himself into the machine to destroy Petrov, and Maya understood what it cost him, because a man who turns federal witness against his own corrupt handler does not walk away clean. He walks away exposed, a marked man to every other organization that had ever paid Petrov, a cooperator, the lowest thing his world recognized. He gave up arrangements that had protected his family for 2 generations. He handed a prosecutor the keys to his own kingdom. And he did it without hesitation the night Maya asked him to. And when she asked him why, again, helplessly, because she could not stop asking the question whose answer she already knew. He finally said it. They were on the roof of the safe house. In the rain, the city spread out below them in smeared gold. And Petrov was in federal custody, and the danger was, for the first time in 4 months, not pressing directly against their throats. "You asked me why," Adrian said. He was not looking at her. He was looking at the city he'd just set on fire for her. "The day you figured out I was feeding you intel. You asked why I didn't kill you, why I didn't expose you, why I spent 4 months keeping a federal agent alive at my own risk." He turned, and the rain ran down his hard face, and for once, he let her see all the way in. "Because you walked into my office to destroy me, and you were terrified, and you did it anyway. Because you were the first honest person to sit across that desk from me in 15 years, and you didn't even know you were honest. You thought you were a liar. You thought the wire made you a liar. But you were the only person in this entire city who was exactly what she pretended not to be." His voice was rough. "I have been surrounded by deception my whole life, Maya. I was raised in it. I'm made of it." And then a translator sat down across from me and lied with her mouth and told the truth with everything else, and I could not. He stopped. "I could not let them put you in the ground. That's the why. There isn't a better one. There never was." The rain fell, the city glittered, and Maya Cruz, who had spent 2 years and her whole career learning to read what people meant beneath what they said, looked at the most dangerous man in Chicago and read him perfectly, and found nothing underneath but the truth. "I'm still FBI," she said. It was the last wall, and they both knew it. "When this is done, I have to walk back into that world, and you're a cooperating witness against a federal agent, which means you're about to become the most watched man in the country. There's no version of this where we—" Her voice failed. "There's no version of this, Adrian." "I know," he said. "You always say that, because it's always true." He stepped closer, and the rain was between them, and his hand came up and did not quite touch her face. "I'm not asking for a version, Maya. I told you that in the safe house, and I meant it. I didn't keep you alive to collect you. I kept you alive because a world with you in it is better than a world without you. And that was reason enough, and it's still reason enough. And if all I ever get is the knowledge that you're out there somewhere, breathing free, honest," his thumb finally grazed her cheekbone, "then I will have gotten more than a man like me deserves." And Maya Cruz did the thing she had been not doing for 4 months. She closed the 4 inches. She rose up in the rain and kissed the man she had been sent to destroy, and he went still the way he always did when she gave him something undone by being given to. And then his arms came around her like the closing of a vault, and the city blazed gold below, and for one long moment there was no bureau, and no oath, and no Kovač organization, just 2 people made of careful lies, finally telling each other the only truth that had ever mattered. The trial of Raymond Petrov ran 4 months and ended the way Maya had built it, to 11 years of buried corruption, disinterred witness by witness, the dead informants given names again, the collapsed cases reopened. Petrov went away for the rest of his natural life. The Bureau, scrambling to contain the catastrophe of a decade-long internal leak, found itself in possession of the most decorated undercover linguist of her generation, the agent who'd caught the traitor inside the house, and very much did not want the story of how she'd done it examined too closely. Maya understood leverage. She'd learned from the best in the city. She traded her silence about the Bureau's negligence for 2 things: a clean exit and the quiet shelving of any inquiry into the cooperating witness who'd made the case. Adrian's cooperation bought him a different kind of exit, not freedom. There is no clean freedom for a man with his name, but a door. The organization he'd inherited and never wanted came apart in the wake of the trial, and he did not fight to hold it together. He let it go the way you let go of a weight you've carried since you were too young to refuse it. He surfaced eventually in a coastal town far from Chicago, under a name that was almost his own, watched by the federal apparatus that didn't fully trust him, and the criminal world that wanted him dead, and a single former FBI translator who, after a year of telling herself there was no version of this, finally stopped lying to the only person who'd never lied to her. She found him on a gray morning at the end of a long pier, the lake the color of pewter, the wind off the water, cold and clean. He was watching the horizon, the way he'd once watched the city, and he heard her come. Of course he heard her. He heard everything, and he went very still, and he did not turn around. "I quit," Maya said to his back. 3 weeks ago. Turned in the badge. Turned down the promotion. The wind took her words and gave them back. Turns out I'm not very good at being two people anymore. I used up all my lying on Petrov. She stopped a few feet behind him, her heart hammering the way it had that first day across his desk. I'm only one person now, Adrian. I thought you should know which one. He turned, and the cold that the whole world had feared, the flat, patient stillness that had emptied rooms and ended men, was simply gone. There was nothing left in his face but the truth he'd never been able to hide from her, and he closed the distance this time, every inch of it, and took her face in both his careful hands as the gray lake roared. "Say the word again," he murmured. "The one from the manifest, the first day. I want to hear how you say it now." "Lajlivitsa," Maya whispered. "Liar." And she smiled, and her eyes were wet, and she said, "But not to you, never once to you." "No," Adrian agreed, and bent his head to hers, and the wind off the lake wrapped around them both. "Never once to me." And somewhere far behind them, a city full of lies kept turning in the rain, and out at the end of the pier, in the clean gray light, two people who had been built to deceive the whole world stood telling each other the only thing either of them had ever believed. And this time, neither one of them said, "I can't."